Everyone thinks empires collapse because of wars, revolutions, or corruption, but history has a quieter killer, the balance sheet. Not the battlefield decides the fate of empires, but the arithmetic of trust, debt, and metal. Spain didn't lose its empire because its soldiers got tired. It drowned in silver. France didn't fall in 1789 because the people suddenly wanted democracy. The monarchy had printed too many promises. Britain didn't shrink because colonies rebelled. Its financial empire simply stopped matching its real production. Each believed they had discovered a way to make wealth infinite. Each believed they had transcended the laws of money. Sound familiar? Look at America today. The dollar rules the world. It's paper-backed not by gold but by confidence, a kind of collective hypnosis. Yet every empire before it said the same thing. In 1590, Spanish galleons brought silver from Potosí by the ton. As long as the mines flow, we're rich forever. In 1710, the French Mississippi Company issued shares. As long as confidence grows, paper is as good as gold. In 1890, London banks financed half the planet. As long as trade expands, debt is safe. In 1945, America replaced gold with the dollar itself. As long as the world trusts us, printing is power. Each step looked like progress. Each step looked rational, until the ledger didn't balance anymore. Because all empires, from Madrid to Washington, run on the same hidden rule. Money is only real as long as someone else believes it is. When belief fades, interest rates rise. When interest rises, debt collapses. When debt collapses, power collapses. It has happened 5 times in 5 centuries. Every empire began with gold and ended with paper. Every paper ended in fire, inflation, default, or revolution. The paradox is simple. The stronger a currency becomes, the more it invites its own destruction. Because the world starts using it, hoarding it, borrowing in it, until the empire itself becomes hostage to the demand for its own money. If you're hearing this in 2025, understand, America is not the first to believe it can print forever. It's simply the latest to test the oldest equation of all. Can trust outlast arithmetic? Every empire begins with something tangible, land, gold, ships, or grain. But to expand, it must do one thing, turn reality into credit. That's the secret mechanism, the invisible engine that lets kings, companies, and presidents stretch today's wealth into tomorrow's power. Let's start 5 centuries ago. In 1494, the same year Columbus returned from the New World, a Florentine friar named Luca Pacioli published a strange little book, Summa de Arithmetica. In it, he described a system called double-entry bookkeeping, 1 column for what you own, 1 for what you owe. It seems dull, but it was revolutionary, because suddenly wealth could be written before it existed. Credit could be born from ink. That was the real discovery of the Renaissance. Not America, not printing, but the ability to create money by agreement. Spain was the first to weaponize it. They had silver from Potosí, but more importantly, they had the asientos, financial contracts that turned future treasure into present loans. The bankers of Genoa and Augsburg financed kings, not because they loved empire, but because the crown pledged future metal as collateral. From 1550 to 1650, Spain received 180 tons of silver per year. Yet by 1650, it was bankrupt 5 times. Why? Because it had built a system where metal flowed out faster than real income. Spain exported silver, imported goods, and paid interest. Arithmetic 1. France learned from that and improved it. In 1716, the Scottish gambler John Law convinced the regent of France to create the Banque Générale, later the Banque Royale. It issued paper money backed by land and trade instead of metal. Confidence was the collateral. Law's logic was seductive. If credit expands, trade expands, and if trade expands, the nation grows rich. For a while, it worked. Paris boomed. Shares in the Mississippi Company multiplied tenfold. Then one day, investors asked for gold instead of paper and found there wasn't enough. The bubble burst. The crowd stormed the bank. The paper burned. Across the channel, the British watched and took notes. They did the same thing, but smarter. They created the Bank of England in 1694, but they never called its paper money. They called it notes, promises to pay. They tied them to government debt, not land, not silver. Every war Britain fought, from Napoleon to the Opium Wars, was financed not by taxes, but by the ability to issue more paper, backed by bonds. It was a pyramid of trust, but a stable one, because it grew with empire. Each colony, each port, each ship that returned with tea or cotton was another brick supporting the pound. The City of London became the first true financial empire, an empire of ledgers. When Britain peaked, America learned the trick. After 1913, with the creation of the Federal Reserve, the U.S. took Britain's model and scaled it for the 20th century. Gold stayed in vaults, paper multiplied. Then, in 1944, at Bretton Woods, the system went global. The dollar became the world's reserve, not because of gold, but because of trust in American productivity, industry, and stability. Every barrel of oil, every ton of steel, every trade invoice, priced in dollars. That was the new empire mechanism. If the world needs your currency, you can print what others must earn. But behind all this complexity, the rule never changed. From the Genoese bankers to the Fed's open market desks, the equation was the same. Promise first, pay later. Create credit, build confidence, expand reach, until expansion itself becomes the addiction. Every empire that mastered credit thought it had mastered time. It could spend next century's income today. It could fund ships, railways, wars, and revolutions before the real wealth existed. But in every case, the bookkeeping columns eventually met. Debits caught up with credits. Gold claims outgrew gold reserves. Interest consumed revenue. And when the books stopped balancing, kings lost their heads, companies collapsed, or currencies died. This is the system America inherited, the machine that turns belief into dollars. And like every empire before, it was built not on evil, but on ingenuity. The same genius that made the Renaissance possible also planted the seeds of every default since. Because arithmetic, as always, waits patiently. If this helped you see how money machines shape empires, drop a comment and tell me which one fascinates you most. Once the system is built, it doesn't start with corruption. It starts with confidence. Every empire enters its golden age when people stop asking where the money comes from. The ledgers grow, trade expands, and the arithmetic still looks clean. That's the phase of illusion, when credit and reality move in perfect rhythm. For a while. Look at Britain in the 19th century. The pound sterling was the sun of the financial universe. London's banks financed railways in India, mines in Africa, canals in Egypt, even the early infrastructure of America. It all looked productive, profitable, inevitable. By 1870, half of global trade was invoiced in pounds, and 3/4 of ships were insured by Lloyd's of London. The British Empire didn't need to conquer by force anymore. Interest rates did the job. If you wanted funding, you played by London's rules. Its paper was as good as gold. But gold itself? It was already secondary. Most of it sat quietly in vaults, while paper and promises circulated the globe. The illusion was complete. Prosperity without limits, built on numbers. Now fast forward to America in the 1950s. Factories hummed, the GI Bill created a middle class, and the U.S. held 3/4 of the world's gold reserves, 20,000 tons. The dollar was not just a currency, it was civilization's scoreboard. Every European nation rebuilt using dollars. The Marshall Plan didn't just reconstruct economies, it locked them into the American system of credit and trade. The world sent goods, America sent paper. It was a perfect trade. Oil for dollars, then dollars for treasury bonds, then bonds to fund military bases guarding the oil. A loop so elegant it looked divine. Confidence became culture. A car in every driveway, a mortgage for every family, a college loan for every child. Debt wasn't danger anymore. It was progress. Banks didn't lend what they had, they lent what they could imagine. And as long as everyone paid interest, the illusion stayed intact. It felt modern, efficient, humane. The same logic that once justified silver shipments and colonial loans now justified credit cards and suburban mortgages. But behind the comfort, the mechanism was ancient. Expand debt faster than income, call it growth. And when the debt grows faster than income long enough, you've built an empire of time. You're spending tomorrow's labor today. In the 1960s, American politicians discovered what kings had learned centuries before, that voters love credit. Lyndon Johnson's guns and butter policy promised war in Vietnam and welfare at home. The budget could handle both, they said. Inflation crept up quietly, but nobody worried. After all, the U.S. printed the world's money. Who could demand payment? Every empire feels immortal at this stage. Spain had its silver, France had its paper, Britain had its trade, America had its dollar. But the arithmetic beneath the glamour never sleeps. By the late 1960s, the world's demand for gold redemption had quietly exceeded America's supply. Foreign central banks, especially France under de Gaulle, started sending dollars back to Fort Knox, asking for metal instead of paper. That's when confidence began to tremble. It was the first whisper of the storm. The illusion was running out of collateral. Still, most people didn't see it. The supermarkets were full, the Dow was climbing, the Beatles were singing about love, not liquidity. That's the trick of every financial illusion. It fails in the data long before it fails in daily life. Empires don't feel bankrupt until the last check bounces. If you lived through those years, you wouldn't have seen crisis, you'd have seen growth. New highways, color TVs, suburban schools, moon landings. The system looked unbreakable. Because illusions don't need lies, they just need momentum. As long as everyone believes tomorrow will pay for today, credit looks like creation. And for a century it did. But remember, when numbers outgrow reality, mathematics waits with a stopwatch. The countdown had already started. If this part made you see growth in a new light, share it. The age of illusion isn't history, it's a mirror. Every illusion ends the same way, quietly at first, then all at once. No speeches, no parades. Just numbers refusing to obey. The chart stops rising. The interest payment doubles. The gold runs out. And then the empire learns the oldest truth in finance. You can postpone the reckoning, but you can't cancel it. It was 1971. The world still believed the dollar was as good as gold. Each ounce was worth $35, a price fixed since the 1940s. But there was a problem no one wanted to say out loud. America had printed more promises than metal to back them. For every real ounce in Fort Knox, there were about 10 ounces of paper claims floating through the global banking system. The arithmetic no longer matched the faith. The breaking point came when France, that same nation burned once by John Law's paper, demanded payment in gold for its dollars. President Charles de Gaulle even sent a warship to New York Harbor to collect the bullion. It was a symbolic act, but a deadly one. Other countries followed. Gold drained from the vaults like blood from a wound. And on August 15, 1971, Richard Nixon went on television and did what no emperor had dared to say so bluntly. He closed the gold window. No more redemptions, no more limits. The dollar would float, untethered, unbacked, but still enforced by trust and military might. That night, the last metallic anchor of the world economy vanished. For the first time in history, every major currency on earth was pure fiat, value by decree. The illusion didn't collapse outright. It transformed. The debt machine survived by evolving into something even more abstract, a system where money itself became debt. Through the 1970s, the numbers went wild. Oil prices quadrupled. Inflation soared to double digits, and confidence cracked. People lined up for gas, wages couldn't keep up, and the same nation that had built the moon landing suddenly faced shortages of toilet paper. Arithmetic had humbled ideology. You can't print oil. You can't decree productivity. You can only shift the cost forward to the next generation, the next bond issue, the next bubble. By the 1980s, the cure was worse than the disease. The Federal Reserve under Paul Volcker raised interest rates to nearly 20%. Entire industries collapsed. Farmers lost land. But for the global system, something new was born: the age of financialization. If you couldn't grow through factories, you could grow through leverage. Debt became the raw material of profit. Wall Street learned what the Genoese bankers once knew: you can make more from lending than from labor. And so the same pattern repeated, just with more zeros. In the 1990s, emerging markets borrowed in dollars, just as colonies once borrowed in pounds. In 2008, the credit pyramid imploded again, not in gold this time, but in mortgages. And once again, government stepped in, printing trillions to, quote, restore confidence. Different tools, same arithmetic. When the debts can't be paid, they are redefined. That's not policy, that's survival. Every empire reaches this stage. Spain tried to tax its colonies harder. France confiscated church land and called it money. Britain devalued the pound and called it adjustment. America printed reserves and called it quantitative easing. The words change, the logic doesn't. Arithmetic punishes delay. The hidden cost of collapse isn't inflation or unemployment, it's trust erosion. Once people sense that numbers are being massaged, they hedge. They buy gold, real estate, stocks, crypto, anything but the currency itself. And when money stops being the measure of value, it becomes the object of speculation. That's when an empire enters its terminal phase. Not destruction, but disbelief. If you zoom out, the 1971 moment wasn't just the end of the gold standard. It was the moment politics officially surrendered to mathematics. From then on, every president, every Congress, every central banker became an accountant of delay, trying to keep the illusion liquid a little longer. But the clock kept ticking, because the numbers don't care who wins elections. They just add. If this made you see the 1970s differently, not as fashion or politics, but as the moment when arithmetic broke the spell, leave a comment. Every generation thinks it's smarter than the last, but numbers don't remember promises. They only remember totals. Look around. The flags have changed, the currencies have new faces, but the mechanism, it's the same. The Spanish silver galleons are now cargo ships filled with electronics. The British bond market has become the global derivatives market. And the new empire, the American one, runs not on gold or colonies, but on obligation. Every contract, every mortgage, every treasury bond is a chain of promises. Invisible, but global. After 1971, the dollar became pure trust. And trust, when multiplied by software, turned into the most powerful tool of control ever built. In the old world, empires taxed what they could see: land, harvests, ships. In the new world, America taxes through inflation. It creates the currency everyone must use, then expands it. Every new dollar printed reduces the value of the dollars already held abroad. It's the quietest form of tribute in history, a tax collected by spreadsheets. The result is stunning. The U.S. can run deficits of $1 trillion a year, and the world still buys its bonds. China, Japan, Saudi Arabia, they all fund Washington spending because they need the system to stay alive. Just like European merchants once needed London's bills of exchange, just like colonial governors once needed Madrid's silver. Every empire's paper becomes the world's oxygen, until the oxygen gets thin. In 2008, we saw the modern echo of 1720 France. Banks had created digital paper, mortgage securities, and sold them as if they were solid. When the borrowers defaulted, the paper turned to dust. The panic was global because the system was global. And what did the U.S. do? Exactly what every empire has done since the 16th century. It issued more promises. Bailouts, stimulus, quantitative easing, elegant words for the same old trick: print, lend, postpone. Debt became infinite, interest near zero, and everyone declared victory. But victory through printing is temporary. Since 2008, the world's total debt, public and private, has tripled. By 2025, it's over $350 trillion, or roughly 4 times global GDP. The mathematics is back. Every dollar of growth now requires 2 or 3 new dollars of borrowing. It's the same as Spain's silver paradox. The more you have, the less it's worth. When credit expands faster than productivity, prices rise, inequality widens, and faith thins out. The illusion persists only because it feels convenient. Politicians promise low taxes and high spending. Corporations promise eternal growth. Central banks promise soft landings. But beneath all those promises is the same equation. Someone has to hold the paper. And today, that someone is you, through your savings, your pension, your paycheck priced in dollars that buy less each year. The empire's borders are now digital. Instead of colonies, it has platforms. Instead of gunboats, it has payment networks, SWIFT, Visa, the Federal Reserve System. These are the ports and customs houses of the 21st century. Control the currency and you control who can trade. That's why sanctions hurt more than soldiers. That's why nations are quietly building alternatives, gold reserves in Shanghai, oil contracts in yuan, cryptocurrencies outside the dollar grid. The same process that once dethroned the pound is now beginning to whisper around the dollar. And yet, like every empire in its late stage, America believes its system is too central to fail. Spain said the same about silver. France said it about paper. Britain said it about trade. Every one of them was right until they weren't. Because arithmetic is not patriotic. It doesn't care if your flag is red, white, or blue. When your debt grows faster than your income, your future shrinks. When your currency becomes the product itself, you are no longer exporting goods, you are exporting trust. And trust, once questioned, disappears faster than gold from a vault. So here we are, 5 centuries later, living inside the same formula that buried every empire before us. We call it innovation, but it's repetition with better marketing. We build new names for old debts, new narratives for old defaults, and new screens to hide the same ancient fear, that the ledger won't balance forever. If this part made you see the modern economy as a continuation, not a revolution, write it in the comments. Because we're all inside the experiment now. And like every empire before us, we believe this time it's different. Every empire believed it was eternal. Every generation thought its money was different. But the numbers never changed their mind. From Spanish silver to American credit, the story is the same. Arithmetic outlives ideology. An empire doesn't fall because it loses wars. It falls when its promises multiply faster than its production. That's the real law of history. When trust becomes the currency, decay begins quietly, not in the streets, but in the spreadsheets. Confidence leaks through inflation, through inequality, through the quiet realization that paper wealth is not the same as real wealth. The elite always notice first. They buy land, art, gold, influence. Everyone else keeps saving in the empire's paper, until it's too late. Rome debased its denarius and called it reform. France printed assignats and called it liberty. Britain inflated credit and called it industrialization. America issues debt and calls it stimulus. Different ages, same escape from arithmetic. The final illusion is moral, not financial. Empires convince themselves that decline is a choice, that policy or technology will rewrite the math. But history has no mercy for clever explanations. It only asks, did you spend more than you earned? Did you promise more than you could pay? When the answer is yes, collapse is not punishment, it's settlement. There's still time. There always is before the last invoice arrives. America could read the ledger that Spain ignored, that France mocked, that Britain postponed. It could remember that money is not power, only reflection. That the strength of a currency comes not from printing presses or central banks, but from real productivity, trust, and restraint. But restraint is the rarest virtue in history, the one no empire mastered when the whole world owed it money. If you're hearing this in 2025, understand, the future everyone talks about is already collateral. Every empire had its moment when it could still balance the books. And everyone waited too long. The lesson isn't hidden. It's written in 500 years of ledgers. Gold, paper, credit, trust, all obey the same law. What cannot be sustained will not be sustained. If this story made you see empire as an equation, not a destiny, share it. Because the last empire that listens to arithmetic might be the first that survives it.